this book gives a lot of room and a lot of space for precise language and understanding that things aren't really about this or that, but more of this and that. It doesn't have to be
or neither. Stop trying to force us into one or the other because it's neither, right?
And when you listen to Malcolm X speak and get interviewed, you see that that is exactly what he does. People say, so you believe this? And he would say, well, what I would say is that blah, 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 blah.
He doesn't say yes and he doesn't say no. He forces them to accept his narrative.
And I think this book sets an excellent prophetic narrative from which to view history.
Hi, welcome back to Gotta Be Me podcast. We're so happy to be here again with you today. We are your hosts. If you have never been with us before, my name is Sophia Benyon, and this is my cousin, Peyton.
That is me. Welcome back to our channel, everybody. If you are new here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're one of our commenters that is very disturbed that we're wearing black and gray again,
Like deeply disturbed.
I would ask you to please go look at the name of our channel.
Go to the top,
which would be called Gotta Be Me, okay? So if we want to wear gray, we're gonna wear gray again. Now I do like different colors, but you know what? It's just gonna keep coming up, and I think we're probably gonna wear black and gray again, and honestly probably black and black, but that is not the point of our podcast, and I'm always the one who comes on with the mean things to say, so I will now turn it over to my nice counterpart over here, Sophia Benyon. I'm going to stop now.
Hey, you gotta love the truth. At least she's telling you like it is. We are excited about our topic for today. We want to talk about another book, but to me this is a very special book. It's another book that changed our lives, but it kind of changed our lives in a different way than maybe the other books did.
I think it's one kind of the basis for our podcast, and most of our understanding that we talk about probably comes from this book directly or indirectly.
Absolutely. We are very proud to say that we are personally acquainted with the author, Stephen Hargrave, and we hope that someday we are lucky enough, blessed enough is better, to get him on the podcast, so we'll see if that ever happens. But we would just like to talk
read the title for us.
It's called Hustlin Backward. The subtitle is Regressive Progression. This is the story of freedom captured.
That's so catchy. That last part, I always love it.
Me too. And I'm glad we've memorized parts of it. I hope we memorize more. So, like we've talked about, we grew up quite sheltered, and
I think we did grow up sheltered, but in another way we didn't because of our traveling.
Educated, you know what I'm saying? And also the traveling. But
we were all over. But yeah, sheltered to like secularism.
Secularism, and we weren't, even though there were people that were, ignorant or even racist around us, we didn't really realize that was happening. Like when everybody wanted to touch our hair and say, oh, it's greasy, why is it springy, and pull it and things like that. Yeah. We didn't even think like, we were just like, yeah, you can touch it.
I always thought like my hair is so cool, but at the same time I thought it was cool, but like in an embarrassing way. Like I was super embarrassed because all these white girls I was around had like the longest hair ever,
and they could flip it
all around. Okay, I'm still bitter about it.
No, you need to.
Now I'm holding on to that bitterness.
You need to let go.
I have a grudge.
I need to
I have a grudge.
Glory in your afro, okay?
I love my afro. I'm just kidding.
So anyway, like we said, it's kind of how we grew up, and when Brother Stephen, we actually were on and off exposed to his preaching all our lives.
Well, I grew up with him as my pastor.
For a few years, right? Or like how many years?
As most of my life until I was like 13.
That's really great.
Yeah.
And then I would hear him preach like several times a year. But only in the past like 5 or 6 years did I feel like he finally started dealing with probably what he'd been wanting to deal with and building up to his whole life to preach. And that was the subject of racism and white supremacy. He preached this series of a message called Whitewash that were so powerful and eye-opening.
It was great. It was like shocking to the church at large.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
I think it was even somewhat, it wasn't shocking for me. I was familiar with all the sentiments, but the way he put it together, like I thought people just always said randomly rude comments to me
and
somehow.
It had nothing to do with
and
racism.
I didn't realize that it was a completely eighth beastish, disgusting system
and spirit that was affecting them.
And
they didn't
not
know it. Maybe.
Just like black versus white racism, but a spirit of division.
Right.
That is just completely working.
So when he started preaching those messages, he hadn't yet published his book, but he was like quoting chapters that he had written, sections. A lot of his book, he has like written in there sections of speeches from Martin Luther King, James Baldwin, Malcolm X. So he'd be reading those, and it was like just revolutionary because, you know, like we've said before, you know what you know about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King from school, but like some of their speeches and some of the things they said, especially toward the end of their lives, are like,
they didn't tell us that.
Mind-blowing. So we're so thankful for that he was able to put all his thoughts and burdens.
And obviously what we're saying here is our perspective of the book. We wouldn't want to like speak for him like we know this is what he was saying.
Absolutely not.
But this is how it affected our life. This is how we translated it and filtered it through our minds.
And how it's able to change us. I feel like it helped me, you know, be prouder of who I am and understand what it means to be Black and what he means when he says Black is knowledge and understand what the struggle is and help
how to
me
be a part of it.
Know how to, and actually not just how to be a part of it, but actually give me a passion and a desire to be a part of it and to do all I can.
Yeah, I think it definitely instilled a sense of pride within me and unity and understanding of a common ground with
humanity, right?
Yeah. And even in a tighter sense, the other Black people around me.
Absolutely.
And realizing, no, we got more in common here. Another way that reading this book has helped me is it gives a lot of foundation for precise articulation.
Yes.
It's really tough in the age we live in and with the English we speak and in the social media age we live in to
Language
say things
is everything.
Without being immediately categorized into one thing or another.
Right.
For example, if I say to you, I think that Black lives matter. I can say that, but immediately all of America thinks, okay, she's a part of this movement. She voted for Mr. Biden. She is probably a part of the LGBTQ community. She is this, that, and the other,
like,
okay?
Immediately, they categorize you into all of those things.
All right. So this book gives a lot of room and a lot of space for precise language and understanding that things aren't really about this or that, but more of this and that. It doesn't have to be one or the other,
or like even,
that.
Okay, this and that, or neither. Stop trying to force it into one or the other because it's neither, right?
And when you listen to Malcolm X speak and get interviewed, you see that that is exactly what he does. People say, so you believe this? And he would say, well, what I would say is that blah, 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 blah.
He doesn't say yes and he doesn't say no. He forces them to accept his narrative, to say exactly what he means to say.
And I think this book sets an excellent prophetic narrative from which to view history. And that's what the book, I think, is a lot about. Prophecy in history. A chapter that specifically I really love is the chapter about white supremacy. Now, I'm not supposed to talk a lot about the chapter because we want to get into different chapters later, but it just really goes deep into it and talks about it in a way that I think even white people would be able to take. Maybe that sounds bad, but
it's true.
You know, I'm sorry, that white fragility be real. You know what I'm saying?
And Brother Steph has a way of explaining it in a way it makes total sense and it's not polarizing like that.
I just have to talk about this part.
You know, can we say this thing that they've been saying that,
go ahead.
That our friend told us about, that there's like a chant that they do in the marches that says, we say
slavery, you say sorry.
Like, if anything was ever polarizing, and this book absolutely does not do that. But at the same time, it doesn't let us escape from the fact that white supremacy exists and is very real.
The part in this book that always makes me giggle, okay, is when in this book, in the chapter of white supremacy, he talks about
when he goes to the steps
that white people will take when they are approached with the idea of white supremacy and white privilege.
The reason
I have seen
so many times,
countless white people,
my own friends,
countless white people follow those exact steps.
It's good,
and it is just grand. You know what?
But honestly,
you have to read it.
The thing is, we had to learn about it too. And I think I can safely say when we first heard about it, we probably would have been in denial too. Like, no, surely not. But once you work through the book, and this book takes work. It's not just like a pick up and light read. You're going back, like even right now I go back, I'm highlighting, underlining, writing notes.
But that's what's so good about it.
Yes, and let's tell them the best part, the audio book, read by the author himself. I almost think you can't get a proper understanding of the book without hearing the audio read by the author, get his meaning for it.
And at least,
he has a whole dramatized ending.
We know him, so when I read it, like, I hear him saying it anyways. You know what I mean?
But especially if you don't know him, like, it's so priceless. Anyway, that's just an intro to Hustlin' Backwards. We hope in the future that me and Peyton can just dive into the chapters. Of course, again, we wouldn't want to interpret for him what he's saying, but just what it means to us, how it's affecting us, and how it's helping us. So we will drop the link to this book in the description. We'll try to drop the link too for the audiobook. This is foundational. It will enlighten your understanding. I think we can promise it'll change your life.
We really enjoyed this book. I've read it several times in patches, I think. There's some chapters I've kind of skipped over, you know, but we really loved it. It is a definite foundational piece for our podcast. A lot of our understanding comes from there, and we hope to get into it more later. Y'all know what time it is.
Peace, love, and hair grease.